Hello, and welcome back to Of the People. I'm Robert Chernin with my lovely co-host, Ericka Redic.
Hi,
Ericka,
Robert.
before we went to break, we were getting hot and heavy about judicial reform
Mm,
and the hypocrisy of the Democrats. But I want to frame this for you,
yeah.
or for us, or for our listeners. I want to frame this. We have an election, obviously very important, as all presidential elections are coming up in
Hmm.
2024.
Yep.
And really, I think more and more people, even our guest last show, Jaco Boyen, said that the silent majority is a ridiculous concept. And I would argue, honestly, the silent majority is waking up finally, right? The sleeping giant has, I think, woken up because people are fighting back, whether it's the parental rights organizations, whether it's the school
Mm,
choice organizations, whether it's, fighting back in media. And The Sound of Freedom, right? That movie
yeah.
is off the off the
Oh
chart
my
successful,
gosh. Oh my gosh. Well,
right?
and just really exposing the groomers too,
Right.
the
Right.
people anybody who's like, the conspiracy theories and blah. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, look at you trying
Right.
to cover up and make excuses for child trafficking. That's interesting.
Exactly. Exactly. But I want to frame this, right? Because
Okay.
this really comes down to what's at stake in the 2024 election.
Yeah.
And there really is such a uh, dichotomy between the view of what does America stand for,
Mm,
right? And the American institutions,
mm-hmm.
right? And there's this whole thing going on with Israel we're going to get to in the judicial reforms a little later
Yeah.
in this segment or perhaps next segment. But I look at certain things as sort of benchmarks or sort of litmus tests, right? There's another um, article in the news. What is it? The Chico Unified School District, right?
Okay.
A judge, by the way, it was a Bush appointee judge, appeals court judge, ruled that the judge had no place in ruling on whether or not a school district could hide a child's identity, including gender transition from the parents.
Well,
Right. And again, you get that whole case of gender affirming care, which is the biggest um, whitewashing of words.
oh
Can you say
gosh.
whitewashing?
Oh yeah.
Am I allowed to use the
We're
word white?
using euphemisms to try to cover up the butcher of children. Yes.
Right. So you look at that, right? And you try to understand the culture war, and even the words culture war, I think, are inappropriate because the war is so much
Mm,
broader than that.
yeah.
The 2024 election is for the heart and soul of America. I think anyone understands that, and you can look at the different candidates, but you look at this through the prism of the war on the courts, right? Because,
Mm,
right, when you look at this, the Biden administration is using the courts on a certain level when it suits them,
that's right.
and yet they're deriding the legitimacy of the court, right? Because it's the last of the three institutions.
Yeah.
So what am I missing here? And I guess my real question is, where the hell's the outrage?
Well, this
I,
is
I mean,
so the judge ruled that the judge didn't have the right to rule on a case. I mean, what was his excuse for
judicial
that?
ju, ju, judicial restraint. Hang on, hang on. And unfortunately, folks, as you can tell, I am on the road, so I got to pull all this stuff up from places because usually I am much better prepared than this. But let me
Well,
just
I
pull
think
this one
the
up so
the
that
thing that you're speaking to, right, is just the constant undermining of all of our institutions. That
that is
is
that is exactly what I'm speaking
right.
to.
So we've already delegitimized the executive branch and the administrative state. The Congress has its worst approval ratings ever, is my understanding. They're in the single digits. So
Well, but so
everybody,
does but so does all the institutions. FBI is down to about a 20% approval rating.
I mean, this is what
So
uh,
so your chief law enforcement agency is down to about a 20% approval rating. What does that tell you about the tearing apart of the fabric of the country, right? Michael Savage famously said, borders, language, culture define a nation,
mm,
right?
yep.
So, border, we have no southern border. And frankly, if we weren't bound by the Atlantic and the Pacific, we'd have no borders there either. Canada, you're next,
Oh, it's already
right?
happening. Vermont has
Language,
seen
we have no
five
common
I think
language.
a 5,000-fold increase in border crossing or border encounters in Vermont. I'm not sure what it is in New Hampshire, but
Yeah, hang on, I'm going to
okay,
find that.
got it. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Keep going.
No,
Keep going.
it just you're right. If it wasn't for the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, we would have no borders. I would imagine every state along the northern border is having the same issues. They're coming
Right.
from everywhere. And so language, I got to tell you, I don't know what it's like everywhere, but more and more here in Texas, I go to the store, I go to the restaurant, I go to the gas station. It doesn't matter where I'm going. Oftentimes, at least once or twice throughout the day, my encounters with people are, they can't speak English. They are only speaking Spanish. And I'm like, I live in America.
Right. And folks, let's be clear. We're not xenophobic. We're not saying that, speaking your native tongue is wrong. What we are saying is that without a common language, you lose the fabric of one of the things that binds together a nation, right? By the way, so going back to this, so this is West Side Appeals Court before. It's U.S. District Judge John Mendez said he was observing judicial restraint by dismissing the lawsuit from a parent against the Chico Unified School District, right? And basically said that that hid this girl's gender identity from the parents, and basically said that my hands are tied. The Supreme Court said I can't do that, which is a gross misinterpretation. So if you look up,
that is not an accurate interpretation of wow.
Right, and you juxtapose this, right, because it's this whole sort of mutilation of children. Forget about child sex trafficking, which don't forget about it. I mean, which is horrible. But the children that are here let's be honest. When you're growing up, there's all sorts of anxieties. There's all sorts of stress, and who doesn't like me, and I don't fit in, and am I pretty enough, and am I, am I tall enough, and am I smart enough? I mean, isn't that what everybody goes through? So we're going to take confused children,
normal and adolescence and puberty.
Right. So this girl in particular wanted to talk to her mom about that. She was confused. Basically the guidance counselor, if you remember that term, basically manipulated her into keeping her mom in the dark. Right. And she would visit the girls' class regularly, right? I mean, so you're talking about grooming or proselytizing, right? And then instantly assigned her a gender identity, and then you juxtapose this with the amount of surgeries that are going on that are mutilation, and there's just no evidence for it, and yet that's what we're teaching our children. And those are the values, right? We're still under border language culture. So we're under culture.
Yeah.
Those are the values that are being taught. And it's okay to mutilate a child. And there's this guy in, what's his name? Blair Peters, Oregon Health and Science, who basically said that, quote unquote, I don't know if I can read this on the air, but you may have to bleep this one out. But basically said that there's no published research on genital operations on, quote, pubertally, I guess, suppressed adolescents, which are especially challenging on young males because their private parts have too little tissue to construct.
That's right.
Right.
Yes. So what happens is if you put young men, particularly on puberty blockers, their genitalia does not grow large enough or substantial enough to create a.
There's that size. Are you bringing that size issue in again?
Yes. Literally.
I'm sorry.
There's not
I shouldn't
enough,
make a joke on such a serious topic.
I know, but
it's very serious.
That's the thing, is there's not enough to make a fake vagina. And so this is part of the whole thing is you cannot have informed consent by definition, because these children have not had sex, they have not had an orgasm, they cannot have informed consent. I mean, they can't anyway because they're children, for God's sakes, but they cannot have informed consent because they haven't actually experienced or knowledge of the thing that they're going to miss out and lose out on if these things go underway. And now you have states like Vermont passing laws legalizing the kidnapping and gender and genital mutilation of children. Literally, Vermont passed a law that said, if your state doesn't allow for mutilating your child,
come here, we'll do it for you.
and we won't go along with the extradition from the other states. We're not going to protect your child from these decisions that are going to affect them for the rest of their lives, no matter what.
And by the way, so this doctor, Blair Peters is his name, in Oregon, the part of the Oregon Health and Science University, said the following: "There's going to be a huge role for therapy during the surgery process. This is definitely something we're going to learn a lot more in the next 5 or 10 years as we're just doing increasing numbers of these cases." So my attitude is, and again, these are the things, folks, that are at stake in the next election, because it's really the heart and soul of America. Is this okay with you guys?
We're doing
scientific. Why is it?
We're doing
No. Why isn't there mental health? Why isn't there mental health first? Why is there not mental health first?
We're literally doing scientific experiments on children, but then
That's right.
you have movies come out like Sound of Freedom, and we're going to pretend like child trafficking isn't a thing. But then we're also going to admit out loud that we're doing scientific experiments on children, that we have no idea how it's going to affect them in the future. I mean, this is when we, oh my God, history is going to judge us so harshly for what we're doing to the most vulnerable population among us. It is talk about deplorables. Good golly.
I agree, but history will only judge us if we're victorious in this battle of good versus evil, right? Because the victors write history. Let's be clear.
That's right.
Right. So, again, I know this is a heavy topic. The Jersey side of me would have poked fun at a few things, but this is not a topic I can poke fun on at all, because it is so serious, and it really is. It's such a huge part of what's at stake in this whole culture war in these upcoming elections. So, folks, when you look into all of these issues, understand the bigger issue that's at stake here.
That's right.
Which is, what kind of country do you want to live in? And what's being foisted upon you is they're delegitimizing institutions as a way of, because you're really talking about the ultimate in relativism. There is no right. There is no wrong. Right. And, that's that old argument that one man's freedom fighter, terrorist, is another man's freedom fighter, which frankly is a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
It all centers on the children. As Jaco Boyen said, the children are the next generation. And I know you're not supposed to make this analogy, but I will. I mean, there's a reason that Hitler started the Hitler Youth Movement, right? I mean, you want to go after the youth because they're the most impressionable. If it's okay to parade in front of kids naked, if it's okay to take a normally confused state of a child who is growing up and doesn't understand sort of the world around them.
That's right.
And yet it's okay that they can, through gender affirming care, they can be proselytized, mutilated, change their gender, and parents have no right to know what's going on with their child. Because again, the argument that they make is, well, there could be abuse at home, or there could be, that's such a whitewash of things.
They make up so many excuses. This is
the
manipulation.
There's abuse at home. So right. There's abuse at home. So the parents can't know. So we're going to abuse them in the schools. But that's okay. And you guys can't know about that.
I mean, that's what's so outrageous to me is there is this manipulation, this emotional manipulation that is so disgusting to me. Oh, if you don't do it, the kid's going to commit suicide. Well, it's a 50-50 shot to begin with. And it's pre or post surgery, pre or post transition, 50-50 chance that they're going to commit suicide. So why are we using that to manipulate people? And how is it, honestly, I I blame Generation X and I blame the baby boomers for this. You know, we can say how millennials and these Gen Yers are a bunch of crazies and how dare they do stupid stuff. It's our fault. We raised this generation. The baby boomers and Generation X have raised these people without any sense of duty or responsibility or truth, justice, reasonableness. We are literally allowing the next generation to decide, you know, what is true, what is false. And again, it's people who are already young people who are hormonal, going through puberty, who have no idea what is going on, and we're telling them that they're in charge and that they're in the best position to make decisions. Oh my God.
Yeah, you can't vote, you can't serve in the military, but you can decide what gender you want to be because you're confused growing up. Well, by the way, if you had paraded all these naked people in front of me when I was a kid, and you know whose gender is what, I mean, I would have been confused too. We're all confused at that point.
That's
So they're
right.
going after the most vulnerable, which is again, an abomination to me. It's an infamia. Look, this all comes down to the 2024 election, and this all comes down to that really the judiciary, the
Yeah.
courts, are the last battlefront of legitimacy in the system, in the constitutional system that's left. I talked about it in the monologue. I'm going to talk about it now. I do want to go to break. We're going to come back, right afterwards and really delve into that, because the same battle, sort of inverted, is now going on in Israel. And it's the same battle here, but from sort of the opposite side of the spectrum, which is an interesting thing. And if you want to see what's going to happen here, folks, stay tuned. We will be right back to talk about it.